Welcome to the Mango Effect podcast, where every week we talk about the path to living a limitless life and having the freedom to do it your way. No topics are off limits. We get into the practical, the hypothetical, and the downright juicy stuff. I'm Mindy Rosser, your host and lifestyle cheerleader, and I'm here today to talk about why sometimes we just have to get a little bit gutsy to make things happen. I don't know about you, but when I make a change, anytime that there's a little bit of a shift in my life, in my family, relationships, with my kids, with my own mental health and my own relationship with myself, there's always that little bit of gutsiness that is required to make things happen. And I talked about a little bit about this when I was breaking down Mango and MANGO, and the G is for gutsy and what that actually means. And I think sometimes when we think about gutsy, we think about going all in. We almost think of like I don't gamble, but when you're gambling and you just kind of like push in all your chips, I've watched that scene in movies many a time, and they just go all in and hopefully it all works out. Sometimes it does, and sometimes you just kind of lose everything. And that's not exactly what I mean when I say getting gutsy. And when I think about getting gutsy, I really like to think about it from a calculated perspective. When we get gutsy, when we take risks, it's really about counting the cost and making sure that if it does not play out as we anticipate, that we actually are okay with the cost on the other end. And I've taken a lot of risks recently and a long time ago and throughout my lifespan that some I regretted very much. Others I thought, it was worth it. It either did or did not pan out as I expected, but it was worth taking that calculated risk. So let me give you an example of something that is happening right now in real time as I'm recording this. You may listen to this a little bit after the situation, but in real life, like in the right now, we are definitely working through a situation with relocation, which I have mentioned, to achieve a different life vision than I had originally anticipated even a year ago. And so working that direction, sometimes we actually have to ask ourselves, when we get signs that things are not working as smoothly, or maybe there's a hiccup, as I like to call them, along the way, those are always opportunities to say, am I headed in the right direction? Remembering that you are realigning with your values, you're realigning with your direction, you're realigning with your long-term vision for your life or your career or your business, and then taking that moment to actually pause and say, let's think about this again. All right, have we looked at all the options? Is there something that we're missing here? Should we get outside advice? And for us, it's really about finding the right house. So as we are looking at the market right now, prices are dropping. Do we wait to buy a house? Do we buy the house now? Do we go with the original house that is all fixed up? Do we go with the fixer-upper house? Which one should we get? If there's an in-between time from when we leave Oahu to when we arrive in Chicagoland, are we going to be staying in an extended stay, or do we need to rent an Airbnb? Like, what does this whole process look like, and what is the best for our family, but also not just in the near term, I'm okay with being uncomfortable for a few weeks, but in the long term. So making the right choice moving forward and what that actually looks like and playing it out. So in our minds, when we set on this intention that we are going to move, that we are going to relocate back to where we have a support network, where we have family, where education is easily accessible, all of that good stuff in alignment with our new life vision, how do we make this as seamless as possible? And is it the right time to buy a house? Is it a better time to maybe rent for a few months? Is it, that we are kind of in that in-between and maybe we rent a temporary dwelling for a few months to really get our sea legs and actually be on the ground and actually able to go drive around and look at houses in real life instead of doing the virtual walkthrough with real estate agents, which we have done plenty of. So it's been a point in time where we've actually had time to think about it. We had a hiccup in the home purchase process, and nothing that's not navigatable, but that also altered the timeline and gave us an opportunity to think, are we making the right choice here? And why are we doing this? Because in our minds, our intention with making the move is to actually cut our living expenses dramatically, like at least in half, if not more, because of the cost of living and the differentiating factors and all of that good stuff. So this has been a really good exercise for us to say, okay, calculated gutsy. Yes, we're gutsy, like our stuff is already en route. It's already on the way to Chicagoland at this point in time. But also, what are we going to do when we land? What is going to be the best for our family? How uncomfortable are we willing to get? What are we willing to do? And how is this helping us achieve that long-term life vision? Because the key is, yes, we could, get a more beautiful house and be strapped financially, or we could go for something that just requires a little bit more elbow grease, getting our hands a little bit dirty, and not even that dirty. Like, it's not crazy. It's not unlivable. And what would be the benefit of both of those? So there's always pros and cons. So really mapping that out. And this is just an example from something that is very real and tangible for me right now with the ups and downs of the home buying process, as I'm sure many of you have experienced yourself. You think it's going to be like this straight, smooth sailing process, like, okay, all my numbers look good, we can afford this, boom, done. And especially if you're a business owner, you know that it's a lot trickier when it comes to purchasing a home, especially if you are the breadwinner. It's just part of the deal, and you have to roll with it. Got to find somebody who's a little bit more on the entrepreneurial side themselves, especially when it comes to lending. But I feel like there are so many points where I just get so frustrated, and I use a few more expletives than I should. And my children correct me and say, "Mom, language." And then I think, okay, reminder, ground yourself, Mindy. Everything is going to be fine. The funds are there. You're great on paper. Credit score's good. All of this is good. You are in the right direction. You're just running into a hiccup. And you know what? In the rear view mirror, you're not going to remember this. And I think that's something that comes with life experience. Those of you who have had a bit more life experience than maybe than I have, or just in general, you can look back at times where you thought, the whole world is falling apart. This one thing is just so problematic. And somehow, some way, you get through that one thing. And then you look back on it and it's not so bad. It's like, I like to view it as like childbirth for those of you who are mothers, and you have birthed children yourself. In that moment in time, I'm never having another kid. And you forget about it. And, 2-3 years later, here comes another one. That happened to me. So I can speak from that experience. And I feel like this is very similar. But when we get stuck in our heads, I think it's really easy to go in loops and just kind of spin your wheels and feel very unproductive. And so for me, like what I have done just in this period of uncertainty is really try to find ways that I had autonomy and things that I could control. There are some factors that I cannot control, but in reality, most of it I can control. And I can control things that are happening in my business, a launch that is coming up for me. I can control the way that I interact with my clients. I can control my relationship with my kids. All of that can be controlled. All of that is within my power to change. And it doesn't require me to, get too far outside my comfort zone. The whole world is not coming to an end. There's just one thing that needs to be resolved to give certainty to, okay, how are the next few months here that are ahead of us going to go? And what do we need to be prepared to do? And all of this has been done before. It's not like we're in uncharted territory, but sometimes we always have to remind ourselves when we feel like we're spinning, we have to pause and we have to find a way to ground ourselves. For me, sometimes that looks like surfing. Right now, I don't have my boards. And so it's like, I can't go to surfing. I can't run to surfing. So I have to figure out, okay, surfing is one of my ways that I ground myself, but my boards are on a boat somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean headed to Indiana. And I've got to figure out some ways that I can ground myself between now and then. And so it's looking for ways like, for me, I feel like meditation can be helpful, but sometimes I can't calm my mind enough. Stretching. I feel like stretching is kind of like very physical, or maybe not too physical, but it's physical enough to kind of pull me out of my head and also ground me. We don't have a lot of our things around us. So it's like the things that I used to do, like go sit in the sauna, my sauna's not here. So finding other ways to kind of fit in those things that are rejuvenating and restoring to keep me grounded. And I think this is just a really prevalent topic. I've gotten a lot of messages from those of you going through transitions and really sharing your stories, which I always enjoy. I love hearing your stories. I like hearing what you're excited about, what you're struggling with, what you want to hear talked about. And a lot of what I keep hearing is, Mindy, get real with us. Everyone tells us like these success stories, and we want to hear the stuff when it gets a little bit messy, because that's what the mango effect is about. I think so many people that I talk with, they all envision, like, we have this vision, this life vision that we're all shooting for, and it always looks perfect. But to get to that life vision, it's going to get messy. And you are going to get really uncomfortable. You're going to have moments when you think you can't make it. You're going to have moments where you're questioning everything. And that's just part of the process. But at the end of that, you know, like you're looking towards the goal. You're looking towards where you're headed. Now, if you start heading in the wrong direction and you run into trouble, that's one thing. And that's where you take that moment. If you find yourself in that way, you take that moment and you say, I need to get back on track. But if you are headed in the right direction, everything you're doing is in integrity. It's above board. You feel like, okay, this is what I am called to do. This is the next step. I am learning something about myself and I have to take this next step. This is the right next move for me. When you're certain, now take the time to get certain too. That's important. But when you are certain that you are headed in the right direction and you know why, you know what you're there to achieve, it's okay. It's okay to get a little bit gutsy. Yeah, it's going to be scary, but you're going to make it through. You are going to make it through. And sometimes relying on your support system can really help a lot. Lately, I have been reaching out more to my mom because she's already in Chicagoland. So she's right where we're going to be living. So I get to see her again in real life, and I'm really excited about that. But it's been an opportunity to reach out to her and reach out to my stepdad and just ask for their advice. Like, hey, this is what's going on. From your experience, what would you do in this situation? What is your opinion on this? Just getting advice from people that I trust and people who I know are not going to sugarcoat things and are going to tell me like it is, whether I want to hear it or not. And that can really help a lot with getting confidence about getting gutsy and feeling that support, from the people that are in your life, whether it's a really good friend, whether it's a fellow entrepreneur or business owner that has been down a similar journey and they understand like the ups and downs that come with starting your own business, scaling, getting to that next level, making a career shift, whatever that is. So I know this is going to be a shorter episode today, but it's just been on my heart. And I really wanted to share today about what it's really like to get gutsy, how you can make it through. What are some practical things that you can do? And even as you're listening today, if you're thinking, Mindy, I get it. I get it. And I've been feeling kind of torn. There's been a hiccup in my perfectly laid plan and it's not going according to my timeline. And you may feel that frustration too. So what can you do right now? Is it a good time for you to pause? Sometimes pausing, reflecting, journaling, asking for support, looking at your other options, like if you're headed in a direction and you hit a hiccup, it's like, okay, pause. What are my other options? Are those better options? Or should I continue on the path and work through the hiccup? It's just a logical way to approach it, especially when your emotions get involved. Like for me, I'm a pretty much a logical person. Most of the time, I would say, just in how I make decisions, I'm like, okay, if this, then that. Great. Moving on. Check. So I can be a little bit robotic sometimes, but lately I've actually been the more emotional one in this move, in this transition in my family. And that actually, it's been a different experience. I think just feeling a range of emotions and allowing myself to feel. And I think that's actually a beautiful thing though. I feel a little bit more balanced than I used to, where it was very robotic. Like if this then that, okay, yeah, I don't feel anything. I felt like I must have suppressed all my emotions for so many years. And now I'm like actually expressing them, but in a healthy way, so just really finding that balance, I think, between the logic brain and then the emotions and your intuition and your feelings, because so much of that is intertwined. And even we were even having conversation with a real estate agent and talking to her and saying, it's really interesting. Like we get the numbers on paper, we understand that, but there's also in the way we purchase and what we want to buy and really what our vision is for our family and where we want to be. There's a little bit of woo-woo to it, and we want to feel good about the deal. We actually like to know a little bit about the sellers. We want to kind of know where they're coming from. We want that type of woo, a little bit of woo as part of the deal too. So yeah, the numbers have to work out, but the house has to have that little special something, I think, for us to really feel connected to it in that way. So I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but where are you feeling a little bit gun shy? Where are you feeling a little bit gutsy? How can you get more support? Where can you turn to when you are feeling like a little bit lost or you're feeling spun or too emotional? Like these are things that we have to do as humans, and it's something I've had to learn over time because I truly despise having to rely on anyone else for support except for myself. And that is definitely not a good thing. Like we have to really be willing to work with others. We have to be willing to, we offer support to others, but then we accept support from others. When somebody does something incredibly kind for us, we accept that kindness. And this is something that is really integral to being a healthy human being. And so for me, relying on other people, challenging. But I feel like it's a really good opportunity to grow personally because I'm going to be relying on a lot of people as I'm learning new things, especially as I go back to school. I'm going to be, that old lady that's in the school with all the 20-somethings. And so, just getting comfortable, being uncomfortable and feeling a little gutsy, feeling a little bit out of my element. There's also that kind of fun side to it if you want to reframe it, as Seth Godin talks about. You're always reframing things, reframing situations. It's exciting. It's something different. So the beauty of this is it's a game. You get to play a different game. You're a little outside your comfort zone. You're going to make it through, but it's going to be challenging. And guess what? I'm going to have a heck of a story at the end of it. So I think just in terms of however you need to reframe the situation that you are in too, sometimes a little bit of reframing can be really, really helpful. So kind of to recap, logical brain, then we have our feeling brain, kind of blending the two, making sure that we're feeling balanced, getting a support team, get a support system in place to really help us navigate whatever we're going through next, whether it's family, business, career, whatever changes we have, whether you're doing a geographical relocation like I am. All of that requires a support team. So get your support team in place and make sure you feel confident in everyone that's on your team. If there's somebody on your team that's not playing ball, you need to replace them or you need to talk with them and resolve the situation because it's very, very important. And then just kind of figuring out your next step forward. Really thinking through your long-term vision. And when I get caught up in the minutia of what's going on, with the relocation itself, I will often I default to a couple of things. So I will often look at surfing because surfing is like super calming. Like if I just watch a surf video, it could be surf technique. It could be people surfing waves on Lake Michigan. It could be the local surf competition that is about to kick off as the time that I'm recording this. It could be anything surfing related. It always calms me down and it kind of pulls me out of my head. And then also anything related to learning about medical school or learning about psychiatry or learning about health, nutrition, all of that kind of stuff that's related to the physical body is fascinating to me. So anytime I put in something like that, it also just relaxes my brain and it realigns me to what I'm going towards. Going back to school, going into neuroscience or biochemistry, not exactly sure yet what that's going to look like, what the process is going to be. How am I going to do that and then get into medical school and then from medical school into residency and then becoming, a practicing psychiatrist or whatever specialty I decide at the end of that journey. But that excites me. That gets me going. That shows me that I am headed on the right path and I am here to create a legacy for my kids, for my family, and for those coming after me. And I think the path may shift. Like what I think is going to happen right now, it may change. But that's part of the mango effect and the mango way. You start on a path, you figure out what's working, what's not, and you go towards what's working. And then you get through the hurdles. And then you reassess. Is this still working? Or, if something else needs to be put in place, okay. All right, there might be a little shift to the path. But in the end, the life vision is still the same. I think all of us want to have a happy, healthy life. As best we can. We want to be productive humans. We want to help others. We want to take care of our families. We want to take care of our friends. And however that looks in the end, who really knows? Like we all think we have it mapped out and then something changes. So we never really know, but it does take a little bit of getting gutsy. It does take a little bit of that logic brain and that emotional brain, that intuitive brain, and then getting our support team in place and then taking action and continuing to take action and reassessing when we need to. All right, so how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Like I know it's like around the holiday season, it's New Year's, it's that weird in between, one year to the next year, it's kind of the end of the year, and you got projects you need to wrap up, but then you also have family, and I think it's just one of those weird periods of time that I usually like to just kind of get through. It's like, let's just get to the new year and everything goes back to normal. The holidays can always be a little bit challenging. But how are you feeling about your direction? Where do you need to get a little bit gutsy? Where do you need a little bit more balance in your life? Do you have some things that you can do when you feel a little bit spun that you can turn to really bring yourself back into alignment and into balance? What are those things? feel free to share them with me too. If you're like, Mindy, let's talk about it. Maybe we can brainstorm. You can DM me on Instagram if you want to share your take on the topic. I'm also on TikTok, but my daughter Michaela manages the account. So you can look up at Mango Effect Podcast on TikTok or on Instagram. Message me at either spot, and I would love to keep this conversation going. And let's encourage and inspire each other this week and through the rest of the year. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Mango Effect Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And I'd be thrilled if you love the show, if you want to write a 5-star review, that would be amazing. And that will definitely help us as we continue to grow and move into the next year. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will talk with you in the next episode.